Hi everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be trying a different style of painting video. Instead of the more tutorial or guide format that I usually make, I want to make a video taking you through my experience of painting the miniature. Changing to this style will allow me to show you all of the decisions, mistakes, solutions and problems I face and come up with. Today we're going to be painting a Blood Angels Primaris Marine. We're going to be using a volumetric approach to really make this miniature stand out. So let's get to it. We're going to start off by hitting the under armour parts with Vallejo Game Colour Black. This is going to be all the hardest to reach detail because we don't want to have to come back and deal with this after we've done the main red armour, as it'll be far too fiddly and we're just going to end up getting paint all over our armour and repeating steps. With the underlayer armour done in the Vallejo Game Colour Black, we're going to be moving on to base coating the rest of the armour, which is going to be done in Corn Red from Citadel. We're using this as it's providing us with a really nice base to build up brighter reds and create darker reds by adding brown later. This will be our sort of lower end mid-tone, and it's a really good foundation to build reds upon. With the base coating done, I decided to start adding in the shadows. To do this, I'm using a mix of corn red and dried bark. I targeted the areas that would get the least light from my chosen lighting direction. The direction I've chosen is fairly standard, I feel, as it is from the top down and slightly to the left of the miniature. The reason I chose this direction is it allows me to highlight the most important areas of the miniature, for example the chest and the face, more heavily, which will draw the focus to these areas. I've chosen to darken down the red with brown, as it, like red, is a warm colour, and I feel making this decision keeps the armour looking cohesive and brings it all together. If you're not happy with how dark the shadows are appearing, add a bit more dried bark into the mix and then just sort of shadow a smaller area, and this will make your shadows much deeper, and you can keep repeating this step until you're happy with the end result. To smooth the transitions, I quickly take a thin layer of corn red and glaze it over the transitions between the darkened red and the base colour. Now that I'm happy with the amount of shadows on the miniature, I move on to brightening up the armour. I personally like really bright, bold Blood Angels, and corn red being the main armour colour is far too dark for the result that I want to achieve. So to start off the process of brightening up the armour, I'm using a mix of corn red and Evil Sunz Scarlet. With this, I do the reverse of the shadow step and target the areas that would be the most exposed to the light. I'm starting to like the armour more now. The brightness is starting to get in the right direction. However, I still want to go a little bit further with this. We're going to use pure Evil Sunz Scarlet now, and that's going to be making up sort of the majority of the areas that we've just done with the mix, but limiting it again to the areas that would be more harshly hit by the light. I'm now done with the bulk of the red armour. I'll be doing some further highlighting, but at this point I want to move on to base coating all the other elements of the miniature. Doing this now will mean that any cleanup that would need to be done on the armour would be far easier at this point than when we finished highlighting later. At the beginning of the video you saw me blocking in the black elements that are going to be underneath the armour, so the under armour, that sort of things. I did the gun casing as well because it's kind of out of the way. Now I'm going to go back in and fill in some more of the black details that are on top of the armour, for example like the Aquila on the chest, just because it was far easier to get the armour done before doing this bit. I feel that although I've segmented the same step, it makes life far easier. I'm now going to blitz through the rest of the base coating. I'm going to be using Bugman's Glow for the face. This mini is a sergeant, and from the pictures I've found, sergeants have blue helmets, so I base coat the exposed helmet parts with Cantor Blue. After the helmet is done, I use Baylor Brown for the hair. The Purity Seal parchment gets some Carrick Stone, and the wax gets a coating of Screamer Pink. Next we're going to be base coating the pouches. Both pouches are going to be base coated in the same colour, and this will be Dryad Bark. Again, all of these we want sort of nice thin layers, making sure that you get a nice smooth finish on all your base coats. And like the pouches before it, we're going to be base coating the gold elements with Dryad Bark, as we're going to be doing a non-metallic metal on this. Now we're going to look at highlighting the armour. To do this, we're going to use a mixture of Flashgit's Yellow, Cadian Flesh Tone, and Evil Sun's Scarlet. I got this mixture from watching a video by Travarian on how to paint Blood Angels. I'll link that in the description below. I'm going to brighten the armour further now. This will be the last highlight to the armour that I use on the miniature. To do this, I add more Flashgit's Yellow into the previous mix. With this, we'll be mainly aiming to edge highlight and create a highlight at the centre of everywhere we have done in the previous step. Although having said that, I am going to concentrate this step towards the centre of the miniature, paying particular attention to the chest and torso. When finished highlighting with this colour, the red armour is done. With the red finished, the largest section of the miniature is done. However, all the smaller details remain. The largest of these are the black elements, so I'll start here. To tie the black in with the red, I'm mixing some Cadian Flesh Tone into some Vallejo Game Colour Black. This will create a grey, but instead of it reading as a cold grey, it will warm it up a bit. I add a secondary highlight using the same mix, but with some more Cadian Flesh Tone added in. For the final highlight on the black elements, I add some white into the previous highlight mix to give a real jump in brightness. I feel that this decision really makes each small detail stand out. I think this is especially noticeable on the Aquila on the Marine's chest. Next I'm going to be moving on to the metallic parts of the miniature. I'll be taking a non-metallic metal approach here, using a mixture of Vallejo Game Colours Black and Cold Grey. I will apply this all over the detector device, or the scanner, in his hand, as I want it to look different from the rest of the metallics. For the rest of the metallics, however, I will only add this in the areas of shadow to start creating some contrast to get the foundation of the non-metallic metal effect. Now I'm adding in some more of the cold grey to the mixture. This is going to be used to blend the transitions between the base coat and the shadows. Make sure that the blend is not too gradual, as we do want a sharp transition. We're going to be using this purely to get rid of any transition lines. I'm now going to start highlighting the metal areas. I'm going to be using pure Vallejo cold grey for this. I want to start adding this to the edges of the scanner, as this will be the main highlight of this object. I'm now going to be using pure white. This will be the final highlight for both the scanner and the metal areas. I'm going to be fairly selective on the scanner to keep the difference in the brightness between the two areas very apparent. For the metals, however, I will be applying a lot more of this colour. I want to highlight every edge, as this really sells the metallic effect. I will also be adding in some lines around these areas, so these will simulate metal sheen. As I'm doing this, I think that you can really see the effect coming together, keeping in mind that these are not meant to be hyper-reflective metals. Instead, I'm trying to achieve a slightly more dull effect, which I think really works nicely for these marines. To keep with the theme of non-metallic metals, I'm going to now move on to the gold, which is just this iconography on the bolter. I'm using Mournfang brown all over the area, leaving only the recesses, the base coat of dryad bark, to act as a shadow. I will also apply this as a highlight to the pouches whilst I'm already using this colour. This will be the final highlight to them, as I don't want to spend a lot of time working on the pouches when I could be investing that time elsewhere on elements such as the face. To start bringing up the contrast, I'm using a mixture of Mournfang brown and Avalon sunset. This provides a really nice, darker mid-tone for the metals. Next I'm doing further highlights with pure Avalon sunset. Make sure to keep this nice and thin, we don't want to go over the top on this step. And for the final highlight, I'm using pure white. This will only be applied to the sharpest edges and most raised details. It's this step that will really make the metals pop and really feel shiny. I'm now switching focus away from the metals and to the helmet elements that are left behind. I'm using Teclis blue mixed with Cantor blue to work up some brightness. To finish the helmet off, we're going to do some final highlights. For this we're going to be using the original mixture that we were just using, but we're going to add some white into it. This is going to only be applied to the edges of the helmet to give some really crispy, nice highlights and really make it pop. I'm now going to start working on the face. For faces at this scale, I like to keep things simple. I'm using Kislev flesh to layer over the face, leaving the Bugman's glow in the recesses to provide contrast and give the face definition. For this we're going to really focus around the forehead, the brows, top of the cheeks and top of the ears. This is where the main amount of detail is, and also make sure to focus on the central elements of the face. And to complete the face, we just need to do some final highlights. For this I'm using Pallid Witch flesh. I'm going to apply this to the raised areas, or the raised details, like the bridge of the nose, the brow and the top of the cheekbones. Moving on to the purity seal, I'm adding a simple highlight of Screaming Skull to all of the parchment folds that are higher than the others, to try and provide some nice contrast. After finishing the highlights, I'm adding the scripting to the purity seal, using Vallejo Game Color Black to essentially add some squiggly lines, making sure to try and add some variation in lengths and numbers of words on each line. Next up is the wax portion of the purity seal. I'm going to base coat this with Screamer Pink, followed by highlights of Pink Horror and Emperor's Children, covering a smaller area with each successive colour. The final detail left to finish is the Marine's hair. I'm going for a dark blonde, so over the base coat of Baylor Brown, I'm going to use a mixture of Baylor Brown and Screaming Skull, later using white to brighten for the final highlight. After watching a video from Squidbar Miniatures, I realised that I've been going about highlighting hair in the wrong way. Instead of highlighting the whole top of the head, which I have found can leave quite a flat finish, you instead highlight a halo shape around the top of the head, creating a ring around the head, and I must admit, I couldn't be happier with the result. I think it looks great. With the hair done, I based the miniature and finished up. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. Let me know in the comments whether you preferred this style over the other tutorials that I've done or not. If you've enjoyed, please hit that like button and feel free to hit that dislike button if you didn't. To keep up to date with future videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications. If you want to support the channel further, then there are a couple of ways to do so. I've got a Goblin Gaming affiliate link that can get you 20% off hobby items and gives me a small commission at no extra cost to yourself. I also have a Patreon with some fun rewards and some additional content planned, which is coming soon. Thank you all for watching and have a fantastic day.